Cool. Thanks everyone for showing up. This should be exciting. This is a version of a talk that I gave a while back, and it was really fun to do. It's both planned and not planned, so that's kind of the fun part of it, is that we'll be kind of going adaptively as we go forward. Yeah, let's have some fun. I am managing a lot of software right now in terms of Twitch streaming and Zoom stuff and all that stuff. So let me know. I have 3 chats open. So if there's any issues, it's not audible maybe from Twitch side. Let me know. I think this should be making it over though now. 12:39. Yeah, that should show up now. The audio should go there now. Okay. Great, thank you. Sweet, so we're gonna just hop right into the first little thing here. It's just gonna be a Bob Ross video.
Welcome back. Glad you could join me today. You know, they say that time really goes by when you're having fun, and here we find ourselves on our last show of this series. So I thought today, you know, since I lived in Alaska so long, I'd do a special Alaskan painting. So if you come on up here to the canvas, I'll tell you what we've already done. Now, I've taken a black canvas, as you can see. We painted this with just a flat black acrylic paint, allowed that to dry. And then on top of that, I've put all different kinds of transparent colors. I've put some, right in here, some alizarin crimson, over in here, some phthalo green, phthalo blue and green mixed all over the canvas. So it's completely covered with a thick paint. So it's all ready to go. So let's have them graphically run all the colors across the screen that you need to paint this project with me. And I think today we'll do some northern lights. So come on up here and let's get started.
Cool. So here's Bob Ross. I should probably introduce myself. I'm Hugh Sato. I work as a designer here at 8th Light, here being my living room right now, of course, to your living room. My past with learning how to code and learning how to do all this stuff has been through the lens of creative coding. And so that's some of what I'm going to show you today. We're going to be using something called P5.js. That is a wonderful JavaScript version of a programming language library called processing. And it's been around since 2001. And let me show you my desktop here. Here's that. And this is what P5.js, the editor, looks like. So typically in a P5.js system, if you are actually building it out in a website or anywhere else, you would take you take P5.js, which is a library, and you'd import it into some sort of project, and then you'd kind of work with it to do what you need to. But in this case, they have this lovely editor where you don't have to worry about any file systems, and we're just going to dive into being able to sketch with code. And we're going to try and follow along to Bob Ross following along with this video that we see. And I'm going to walk you through some of the things that you can do with P5.js. It's partially going to be a sort of basics in coding, but it's also, I'm not trying to teach you everything about coding. There's a lot of tutorials out there that can teach you the basics, a lot of things that can kind of get you up to speed. In this, we're going to focus on how to have fun with coding, and also how to sort of think about ways that you continue forth to grow your learning, your coding learning journey through the lens of sort of an artistic practice rather than just building programs or trying to build your list application and stuff like that. So hopefully this would be a fun way for you to be able to experiment and grow from there. If we look at the P5.js homepage, you'll see a pretty wild sketch. Sketch is what we call little programs in processing, by the way. Fun little sketch drawing in the background here, and a little introduction about it. P5.js, it's a JavaScript library specifically for creating accessible and inclusive coding work for artists, designers, educators, beginners, anyone else. It's as basic as you want it to be. It's also as advanced as you want it to be as well. There are some really neat things that it can do that make it extensible to building really immersive and interactive artworks using the browser. Its strength is really the browser. You get to use a lot of the new technologies that come with using a browser with P5JS versus processing, the original processing, which is based off of Java. And so this, with processing, the OG processing, it also is very powerful, but you actually build an application with it, and that application runs on the computer, and therefore you can do very specific things regarding hardware or USB devices and all this sort of other stuff that come with existing on the computer itself. P5JS, of course, focuses on the web. Which is also why it's wonderful that we can edit it in the browser and preview live as we code. And so what we're going to do right now is we're going to set up the canvas. We're going to take a look at what that means. And let's just talk through this right now. So any questions right now? Okay, I just want to make sure that you guys can ask questions along the way. Let me know. I can always kind of pause and adapt as we go here. So in P5JS, along with processing, the core functions that come with it as soon as you create a new sketch are setup and draw. In a lot of computer programs, we have this concept of a main, which is sort of the main function that loops over and over as the program is open. And that right here is our draw function. That's kind of what it's supposed to be. And we have a setup, which runs once right before draw does. So setup runs once before draw, and then draw continuously runs the code that exists within it. Inside of setup, we have this thing called create canvas, and it's exactly what you think it might be, is to create a canvas. In this case is an HTML canvas with two variables that go inside of it, 400 and 400. So this will be your width and this will be your height. And if you're confused at all what any of these things, like how do I know that this is supposed to be a width, this is a height? Well, we also have a handy dandy reference, p5js.org/reference, where you can look through all the fun little different things that you can do with it, from drawing shapes, different constants, the environment, structure, dealing with and handling HTML elements directly, and all this fun stuff. We won't get too deep into it, but just so you know, this all exists, and they're all things that you can play around with, like touch, for example. You can get P5JS to run on your phone, and you can deal with touch as well. Cool. So we've got create canvas, and then we have background 220. What does 220 mean? Well, 220 is a variable from 0 to 255. And that just literally denotes how dark or light it is. So if I make this 0, you'll see on the right, it'll update to black, and 255 will be the full value, which is white. And in our case, because we're trying to paint, we are not going to deal with draw at all. We're actually don't need to continuously update anything. So we're actually going to take background. We're just going to drop it into our setup function and delete our draw function. All right, so we're just going to set up the canvas, and then we're going to draw on it. And in order to get this sort of phthalo green, darkish color backdrop, I'm going to use this fun little tool called trycolors.com. And we're going to mix ourselves a background. It's a little bit of green, a lot of black, a little bit of just one tap of blue maybe. All right, cool. I want to make that way bigger. Yeah, I think that's a good color there. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to grab this number, which is a hexadecimal color value. Just drop it into here. Now what's going to happen is it's going to yell at me because by default it doesn't take a hexadecimal value. It has to be inside. It has to be wrapped up inside of a string. That's what we're going to do. And there you have it. You have our canvas on the right updated with that little green. And I think we're at a good place. Maybe we can make the canvas a little bit wider. Yeah, so we have a little bit more sort of horizontal landscape feel. But yeah, I think we're at a good place here to deal with that. Other notes on color is that, with what we had before with background, we had one variable inside of it, background. we had 255 or whatever inside of it. But you could also have 3 values. So if I have 3 values instead, this will represent red, green, and blue. And right now we have the maximum amount of red and no blue, no green and no blue. And so we have red on the right side. But this is another way to deal with colors in processing. You can also add a 4th variable that'll be an alpha value, how transparent that color is. Okay, so we are at green. I'm going to switch back over to Bob. So we just set up our canvas. And here we're going to take a look at this.
And we'll have 3 layers of lights in this painting. And you can have as many as you want or as few as you want. It's up to you. Up to you. Now then. This is where the fun starts. Let's take a 1-inch brush. And I'm going to begin grabbing this and lifting it upward. Just grab it and pop it. Just pop it up. Okay, there we go. Already you can see it begin picking up some of the different colors. And here, like so. Let's grab this one, lift it up. Boy, Johnny Horton wrote a beautiful song about northern lights. Northern lights were running wild in the land of the midnight sun. And I lived there for over a dozen years, and that has to be one of the prettiest countries in the world. God was really having a good day when he made Alaska. Now then, I'm going to take the 2-inch brush and go all the way through this and lift up, all the way through. Follow the same angles, all the way. Look at that. There you go. And you can pull these as high as you want them. And some parts of the country, they don't see a lot of color in northern lights. They see maybe only whites or yellows, and you can do yours that way. Where I lived, right outside of Fairbanks in a little town called North Pole, sometimes we would see lights in every color in the rainbow.
All right, so sorry, I had to put my cat away. He was starting to meow at me. What can we do with a mouse? So, right, we've got a paintbrush and we can draw with a paintbrush, but in the computer world, we have a mouse. So we're gonna figure out how we can use the mouse to actually draw on the canvas and what tools that P5JS has for us to be able to do that. All right, so here in P5JS, we have a variety of functions for registering that a mouse has been clicked, has been released, has been dragged, and we're gonna just start looking at that. So the way that we do this is we define a function and we call it mouse. We're gonna do pressed. And what happens is as soon as you create this function, P5JS knows to call this function every single time you click anywhere inside of mouse press. So if I use console.log, and I click on the right here, every time I click, you'll see that I get a hello down here. Right. So with that, now we can say, oh, let's draw a point on the screen. Well, a point in P5JS takes an X and Y value. And in our case, we're going to use another known variable called mouse X and mouse Y. Okay. And every time I do that now, you will not be able to see it because we're drawing with black dots, I believe. So we're gonna have to actually tell the point to be a certain color. And we do that by telling the system stroke. We want the stroke to be 255, which will be white. All right, so now that I do that, I don't know if you can see it, but now we get tiny little white dots on the screen where we have that. Unfortunately, what this means for us is that we can't really draw a continuous line on the screen. We're gonna have to use a different function here called mouse dragged, which actually loops through this code as long as you have the mouse pressed. So now instead, we have these little dots being drawn on the screen. I have a little bit of computer lag with my mouse, so you'll notice that it skips around a little bit. Cool, and then we got this little like kind of bird starling kind of look going on right now, swarming. All right, so we're going to change that up. We're going to actually create an aurora with this. How are we going to create an aurora? Well, let's figure that out. So I'm going to switch to my overhead camera here. We're going to take a look at the canvas, okay? So basics about the canvas. It's a rectangle, okay? And let me flip this around so that you're looking at it the way that I am looking at it. Okay. So in the computer world, the canvas, the coordinate system for the canvas works as such. The top left corner here, this is the origin. So this will be 0, 0, 0, x, 0, y. I'm sorry, we're going to go into geometry here for a little bit, bear with me. And if your width is, say, 600, and your height is 400, right? As you move to the right of the screen, you are going up in your x value, up to 600 here. And if you move down, this is the counterintuitive part, if you move down on the screen, your y value goes up. So this down here is 400 plus 400, okay? And we're ignoring the fact that, like, you know, if we travel left and upright, which is off screen, these would be negative values, negative, you know, negative 400 and negative 600 in those directions. Okay, so in order to, you know, what the mouse X and mouse Y values actually return to us when we have a cursor on the screen, it will actually be a coordinate, you know, like say for instance, this will be an X of 400 and a Y of like 200-ish. And so that's the kind of value that we're getting back from the computer, from P5GS. Cool, so we're gonna take a look at the code again. How do we draw an aurora? Well, one of the ways that I'm thinking about it is that from the mouse point, I want to sort of draw and sort of cup upwards from the mouse position. So instead of using a point, we're gonna use a line. And that line is gonna travel from the mouse some variable amount upwards from that point. So these are the first variables, right? X and Y variables, and then we have to tell it where to go. So we're gonna tell it where to go. We don't need it to travel anywhere besides in the X direction. So we're gonna keep the X direction the same. But in the Y direction, we're gonna say mouse Y, and I'm going to subtract, say, 20 from that, okay? And when I do that, you'll see that every time I draw on the screen, it'll draw 20 pixels up from there. Great. And yeah, you get a sort of sense of an aurora. It's not terrible, but it's not great either. There's a little bit of variability that comes from his like wild brushstrokes that we like see him going upwards, right? So let's add a little bit of randomness to it. I'm gonna just use another function that comes with processing called random. And it's going to pick a number that is random from 0 to 20. So now we get to do a little bit more here. Yeah, we're getting close, we're getting close. I think, you know, one other thing that we should try is maybe giving the stroke a little bit of opacity, or transparency rather. So if we give this 255 another variable, say, I don't know, 100 or so, now we're gonna have a semi-transparent line. And every time that line overlaps with itself, it's going to add some brightness to that region, right? All right, so now we get sort of a little bit more semblance of that sort of aurora-ness that comes with painting, like that. We could go for a little bit more variability too. We could increase the random amount here from 20 to say like 100. We could also give it two variables. We could give it anywhere from 10 to 100. So now it's going to limit it anywhere between 10 to 100. Oh, that's a lot. That might be too much. But if I was making a painting solely specifically with an aurora, I think, this might work. That's kind of cool. I like that. I'm going to tone that down just a little bit. Let's cut it down by half. Yeah, I think that's a good amount. One other thing that we can play around here with something called stroke weight. Okay, and I believe this is another value between 0 and 255. But if I go, say, something like 5 right here, it's going to make those lines a little bit thicker. Oh, that's a little bit comically thick. Let's just tone that down to, like, say 2. Just thick enough to have a little bit of presence on the screen, but not too much. All right, let's go back to Bob and let's take a look at what the next part is. My iPad is dying. Let's see.
Beautiful, beautiful colors in the sky. So let's wash the old brush. Give it a shake. Then just beat the devil out of it. And no painting of Alaska would be complete without an almighty mountain. Take a little bit of black, a little bit of phthalo blue. I'll even put a little Van Dyke brown in there. Very dark. Pull it out flat, cut across, get that little roll of paint right on the edge of the knife. Okay, let's go up here. You have to make a big decision. Where does your mountain live? Maybe right there. Takes very little paint because the canvas is already black. There, see? Put little bumps and hills and valleys, whatever you want in your mountain. Just drop it in there. Like so. And scrape off all the excess paint. You really, really can't scrape too hard. Then go take a large brush, grab it, and pull. This just basically removes excess paint. The more of this paint that you can get off, the easier the next layer is to stick.
All right. So, oh, sorry, my chat window is covering my screen. All right, so we're gonna make our ways back here. We're actually gonna make our way back to the overhead camera here. Let's think about what that palette knife is doing. So that palette knife is, it acts kind of like a line. There's always sort of like a certain amount of space, vertical space, or some sort of line space that it's taken up. And it's also angled at some sort of direction, right? And so for creating the mountain, if you noticed, he was always kind of brushing in a sort of angled line, sort of from the top a little bit to the right, and then kind of using that sort of same kind of pattern to create those shapes of the mountain. So that's something we're going to try next. So it's always kind of like this, right? And let's figure out where we want the mouse to be. Well, let's say we put the mouse at the top left portion of this. And this is our origin now. That's our 0, 0. We need to travel down a certain amount and then travel to the right a certain amount, right? This y value is going to be probably greater than the x. And so we're going to say that we're going to travel down, let's travel down about 30 pixels. Let's travel to the y, let's travel on the x-axis, maybe about 15, half of that, okay? So we got ourselves a little bit of a plan. Go back to the code. All right, so we have this thing in mouse dragged right now that's taken up all the space, and that's our entire aurora. But we actually want to do something else in this space, right? So I want to cut this out, and I'm going to actually determine a separate function called aurora brush, rather. And I'm just going to paste that inside. And that'll just be a way for us to like store it for later. And now inside of our mouse dragged, we are going to create, well, actually, you know what, let's do this. Let's create another function called our mountain brush. Okay. Inside of that mountain brush, we're going to also give it a stroke. We have to figure out what that is. let's give it a new stroke weight. I want to say it was pretty thick, maybe a 3 or 4. And then now we have to create this line, right? So let's create this line. It goes from the mouse X position, the mouse Y position, and it travels to the right about 15 pixels, so mouse X plus 15. I know, and people who are coders are like, those are magic numbers, you should put those in variables or something. It doesn't matter, we're doing creative coding here. Mouse Y, we're gonna travel in the Y direction. Oh, it's, my bad, it's in a positive direction, about 30 here. And let's take a look at what it looks like. Oh, actually, let's make the stroke 255 so we can see it. All right, and inside of mouse dragged, we are going to call our mountain brush, mountain brush. Okay, great. So now, yeah, we get this sort of like angled brush. And let's see if we can draw ourselves a mountain with this. I'm going to stop this and play it again. Let's see. Kind of like that. Oh gosh, my mouse lag is the worst. Yeah, something like that. And then we got another mountain. I'm no painter. I went to art school, but I didn't study paint. Yeah, I think that works. The only thing now is we actually have to give it a color. Let's go mix another color together here. So it's from what I understand, it was a little bit of blue. It was actually kind of like mostly blue, and then kind of just really dark. We won't make it as dark as he has it in the actual video here, but we'll get close enough, you know. That's all we can ask for. All right, let's use that value. Let's go back to our editor. All right, we're just going to drop this value in here. Let's not forget to actually put it inside of quotation marks. All right, and now we have a very, very dark mountain in here. Awesome. I think that works. All right, wonderful. Let's take a look at what Bob has next. All right, so we mix some colors.
Right down to the edge of the knife. Let's go back up here. Now then, let's have some snow just coming right down the side of this mountain. Wherever you want it to go. No pressure. No pressure at all. Just let it flow. You want that paint to break. You want all these little holes left in it. There you go. See it? And you can wiggle that knife and cause all kinds of little effects to happen. Let it go. Okay, right up here on the top, we want a little bit of snow right up here. There. It comes right down. Maybe it joins together. You have to make big decisions here. There we go. Okay, now maybe, there's some light striking right over here on that little ridge. Let's begin with our shadows. For the shadows, we'll take the blue and the white, mix it together. Like so. Well, maybe we'll make that a little bit lighter. It's still a little dark for what I want. That's much better. Cut across it, our little roll of paint again. Okay? Now then, no pressure. No pressure. Just let it barely caress the canvas. And just begin laying in all kinds of little things. Anywhere you want a little ridge, just drop it in. This is your painting, your world. And you can do anything that you want here. A little bit right back here. See? Now we can take this one and pull it distinctly through, and it pushes that one right back. Did you know you had that kind of power? Could you push mountains around? Boy, when I go home, the only thing I can push around is a chair, but here I can push around anything. Mountains and trees and rivers. There we go.
Love it. You can push around mountains, y'all. Cool.
In the distance.
Okay. Oops. There we go. Okay. So All right, let's figure out how to draw some snow on the mountains. It's probably going to be very similar to the mountain brush, but actually there's a little bit something different going on. Um, there's a little bit of change over time. The way that he's holding the palette knife actually angles from like a very sharp point to kind of more of a horizontal. And so there's a little bit of time involved in changing from that angle to this angle. So we're going to take a look at how we might incorporate time. There's a ton of different ways we can think about time. Um, but the most basic way is we're just going to define a global variable here, and we're just going to call it time, or you can use let and create this variable called time. We're going to set it to 0. And every time we drag the mouse, we might add 1 to time. So time equals time plus 1. Or to use a shorthand, you can use time plus plus. And every time we let go of the mouse, we want to have it reset back to 0. Okay, so we have another function called mouse, I think, released. I'm going to have to check the docs for that. No, looks like it's not yelling at me, so that's good. We're going to set that time back to 0 here. Okay, and just to test things out, we're going to console.log this time. Okay, so if I hold on the screen here, yep, you'll see instantly we got a buttload of numbers that come out of the bottom there. So that's good. We have some sort of variable that changes over time that we can use. And then we are going to pass it into a mountain snow brush. Okay, so we need a function. We need another brush called mountain snow brush. And in this case, we're going to pass it the variable of time. Okay, it's going to take time, and we're going to use that time to sort of adjust this stuff, right? This line variable stuff. Okay, so I'm going to copy the mountain brush, drop it in here. We're going to grab. We're just going to do white here. So white will be 255. We'll make it interesting, a little bit less than white. The stroke weight, we'll pop it down just a little bit. But this is the important stuff, right? This where the line goes from the mouse to where it ends up being. That's the variable that we want to change. So the palette knife has always a consistent amount of distance from point 1 to point 2. But we need the sort of x value to probably move to the right and probably curve up a little bit. So what we're going to do is let's start mouse x at where mouse x is. We'll just draw a vertical line with this. And then over time, we want it to actually move to the right. Right? And give it a little bit of space here so we can read it. Oops. Okay. And let's use the mountain snow brush here. Snow brush. I'm going to pass it time. Okay. All right. Oh, you know what? Because it's a global variable, I may need to call this something else. I'll just call it t inside of here. Okay. Yep. Look at that. Right. As time goes on, we get the x value moving way to the right, and it just keeps going. There's no cap on that. So, for creative purposes, we might just keep it this way, and just make sure that we do short and direct strokes. That might be a good way to do it. Just as long as you don't hold the mouse down for as long as I just did, I think it'll work. Yeah, there's ways to cap that, but we're not going to go into that too much here. All right, I think that works for our purposes. We actually don't really need to adjust the y because it appears more like this becomes a horizontal line We don't really need to bring the y-axis up too much, I think. Cool. So let's give it a try. So one thing now that we have all these brushes is we need a way to switch between them. And so that's exactly what we're going to do. We're going to create a switch statement. And let's see. Yeah, the way that we're going to do this is we're going to go all the way to the bottom of our code. And we're going to use another function that comes with P5, which is key pressed. Okay. So key pressed, as you might guess, is a function that gets called anytime a keyboard key is pressed. And inside of here, we can take the variable key, which is also a global variable that comes with P5.js, and use it to switch between brushes. So we have a switch function. You can use a switch here. And inside of here, we're going to have different cases. If it's 1 that I press on the keyboard, then I want it to set the brush to something. And in our case, you know what? I am going to use let brush here. And our brush variable is actually going to hold the function that is called every time we press down the mouse. So here we're going to say brush needs to be set to the mountain brush. You know what? We're going to start with the Aurora brush. Okay. I'm just going to copy this here. If it's a 2, I want it to be set to the mountain brush. We're going to go in order here in the way that we wrote them. If it's a 3, we're going to use the mountain snow brush. And if it is, oh yeah, that's all the brushes that we have right now. Okay, and then we typically need some sort of default. So it's just going to be with the Aurora brush. Okay. What is it yelling me about? Expected a break statement before case. Yes, absolutely. I do need a break statement. So break says to the switch statement that I need to jump out of the switch statement as soon as I've finished assigning the brush to some sort of variable here. Okay, we got our switch statement inside of here. We got our key press statement done. All right, so now that we have the brush, I'm gonna bring that all the way to the top so that we can keep track of all of our variables at the top here. And this is JavaScript, so we don't actually need semicolons. And inside of mouse dragged, we're gonna say brush. Okay, and let's see if that works. I know that I'm passing time to every single thing here, so it might yell at me about that. Yep, it's gonna yell at me about that, okay. So not all of the things use time. Let's see, the way that I can solve for this is I could just have the mountain snow brush deal with time directly, so the time variable globally. So I'm just gonna have it stored in there. And yeah, let's take a look here. So brush is not a function, right? Why is that? Brush, let's initialize it to Aurora brush to start with. There we go. And that's probably why it was yelling at me. If I select 2 on the keyboard, I should get the mountain brush. Right, so I'm drawing the sort of outline of the dark mountains in the field. Okay. I want a little bit more angle in this brush, actually. And then if I switch to 3, now I can use our snow brush. And notice that I'm not really getting the sort of stippling and the sort of coarseness that comes from actually using a brush here. It's close. It's not perfect, but we didn't come here for perfect, right? Came here to have fun, and let's see what else could we make here. Yeah. All right. Let's go back to good old Bob over here and see what else he's got for us.
and black. Mix it well. Okay, let's go right up here. Maybe. Yep, I see a big tree that lives right there. Start with just the corner of the fan brush, work it back and forth, back and forth. And as you work down the tree, add more and more pressure. Down here, you're getting tough. Oh, you're really taking out all your frustrations down here. There we go. Just really bang it in there. And maybe there's another tree here. See, start with a corner, back and forth, back and forth. See, I think everything's like people. I've made so many fantastic friends with painting. But I think everything's got to have friends. Trees and bushes and everything needs friends. Everybody needs a friend. I'm going on the other side over here. Shoot, let's get crazy. I want one that goes way up and goes all the way through this northern light. Now, there's as many different ways to paint northern lights as there are painters. This is just one interpretation. This is what they look like to me where I live. It really makes a beautiful painting. And these black canvases, when you change the light source, the painting changes. You put this under 3 different lights, and you'd almost believe you had 3 different paintings. It changes that much. It's almost unbelievable. And at home, try these black canvases with any transparent color. Now, I've got letters that have asked me, how do I tell what color is transparent? There's a very, very simple test. In fact, I'll tell you what, while the camera's right there, I'll show you. Take a color like blue. Bring the camera right in here so we can see. See, if you take this blue and rub it on here, that still looks black. That color is transparent. Now then, let's take a color, okay, let's use bright red. That's a very opaque color. Now, when you put it there, whoo, see what happens? That color is not transparent. It will not do for what we're trying to do here. That's a good test. Of course, now we got a red spot on the canvas. Hey, paint another tree. Trees cover up a multitude of sins. We'll have another one. Yeah, we'll put him right here. He's right there. There he is. This is still the blue and the midnight black. Just blue and black. Okay, I'm going to get a 1-inch brush. We'll use it for a little bit. Take that same color, the blue and the black. Shoot, we'll grab a little bit of this lighter color and put it in there. Pull that brush in one direction. Load it full of paint. It's a very dark blue. Okay, let's go right up here. And maybe we're going to have some happy little snow-covered bushes. So all we're doing is just beginning to lay in some of the very basic shapes. You're not looking for detail yet. Only very basic shapes. Very basic. Okay, let's go right over in here. Maybe there's a happy bush. Yep, that's right there.
All right, we don't have a whole lot of time left, but we're gonna really quickly look at some brushes that I've already made, so we can save some time here. And I added a little bit of randomness here. So you'll see here in my mountain snow brush, I added randomness to the stroke weight itself. I added randomness to time in the mountain snow brush. So as that sort of like, you know, that time gets larger and larger, you get more variability between the values there. And that's something we can also use, like, say, for instance, to create trees. So if I created a function for a tree brush, for example, right? You could also have this stroke weight be random. You could have this mouse X value kind of get random over time, and just have it go straight down in a line. And we'll add a little thing here for a tree brush. So if I go to case 4, And I say we want a tree brush here. Okay. Then if I click 4 on this thing, it's going to give me, oh, that's my bad. Actually, am I using the right brush here? Tree brush. Oh yeah, that's right. That's my mistake. I actually do want the Y direction to go down quite a bit. So I actually want it to go down about 30. And instead of mouse X adding to the X direction, to the right direction every single time, I actually want it to be in the negative time to time value. So it goes from the left amount or to the right. And so if I draw with that, I press 4 on the keyboard, right, you'll see that I actually get a random and increasing variable as I continue to hold down the brush. And this is a nice little way to create your happy little trees here as well. Right, so that's actually quite nice. We just need to make it green. So this would be RGB. So let's just give it R. We'll give it 255 green and maybe a little bit of blue. We're just gonna mix colors live here. Okay. All right. Click 4 on this thing. Oh yeah, that's very green. Let's tone that down to about 150 here. Yeah, a little bit darker. Yeah. Okay. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to create the painting, I guess. Yeah. So we're going to create a little aurora here, going across. Right. Got little mountains here. Create the little areas for them. Okay. Maybe a little mountain over here. Not going to worry about it too much. Okay. So the snow, we got a little snow tips here. I'm going to move pretty quickly here and just kind of create little sharp little brushes across. Maybe it's a little bit too variable, but that's okay. Can fix that later. All right. And then for 4, which is our trees, we're going to draw our trees right inside of there. One that's kind of wild here, kind of reaching in. And that goes up here. Bob Ross is all about those very definitive, very large brush strokes that you're like, why are you doing that? And then all of a sudden it looks correct. So, we're just going to go with that sort of philosophy here. Yeah. All right. Yeah, and I think that works out. Some brushes that I didn't really get to, but I'm kind of running up on time here, are those the little bushes that you see here. So tree bushes and stuff. Using lines here, a little bit more complex sort of functions, just built up from playing around with time and randomness, along with more of a thin tree brush, by actually using an ellipse. So drawing little circles that kind of have a little variableness to create brushes, or bushes actually. This is actually supposed to be a bush brush. Cool. Well, that's it for me. Thank you guys so much for coming by from my living room to yours. If there's any questions, I'm happy to take them. But other than that, we also have a little bit of a demo from Ron Schreiner here that I'm happy to show you in a moment here. I just want to pause for any questions that you might have first. Thanks so much for your feedback here. Yeah.
Hey Hugh, I just wanted to say that was a crazy good presentation. You managed to mix two things I'm very fond of, Bob Ross and P5. So kudos, man.
Thank
Cool
you.
stuff.
I appreciate it. Cool. Yeah, Ron made something a little bit, well, not a little bit, it's a lot a bit more complicated and complex than this brush system, and he's agreed to show it off with us here. So I'll run it. Do you want to talk us through it?
Sure. So it's quite cool that this actually kind of dovetails into. You have to scroll it up a little bit, I think.
Yeah. Sorry, my screen is super zoomed in for the call here.
Yeah. Kind of dovetails into what Hugh did, because he's playing with colors and mixing colors and stuff. And this was a visualization tool that I set out to do uh, for a lightning talk on color space theory. Okay, so I can post the link to this. Anybody can go look at this and run it. It's up on the
Sorry.
P5JS website. Um, but basically, so yeah, Hugh, if you can just like go into the canvas and just drag around a little bit, you'll see that you can spin the cube.
Yeah.
And I'm only going to point out one thing in the code. If you want to go to the code and scroll it down to where it creates the canvas.
Yeah, Ron, you know what I realized? None of this audio is actually making it over to Twitch. So if at
Okay,
the end of your explanation here, I can recap for the Twitch viewers as well here.
sure. So if you get down to where it creates, it's a little ways down. You get down to where it creates the canvas, you'll see that
Create canvas, yeah.
it's using the WebGL
Mhm.
option, which is what gives you the ability to draw stuff in 3 dimensions. Some of the library functions work a little bit differently when you do that. It takes a little getting used to, but
Mhm.
but it just amazed me how quickly I could visualize this. Now, if you can also see below the canvas, I dropped in 3 sliders. Those are just web sliders. So if Hugh, if you could just drag each of them to the middle.
Yeah. So if I drag these to the middle, here, let me, I'm going to close some other tabs here that are
Okay.
taking up. Let me save that just in
Yeah,
case.
this WebGL stuff sucks up a little bit of CPU power.
Yeah. All right, let's see if we can bump this up to the middle here. So yeah, for the Twitch viewers, this is visualizing colors and the color spaces. Ron just mentioned how he was creating the canvas here with WebGL,
Yeah.
and it's a different sort of form of operation because you are dealing with shaders, right? Essentially, and
Well, actually, for my purposes, the shaders that come with the libraries didn't work for me because, and that's why a big chunk of that code is an object that creates the gradients, because they're 2-dimensional gradients. And they didn't have a version of that worked right. But if you, so the idea of this cube represents the red, green, blue color space. And so if all the sliders are way over to the left, you'll see that in the corner of those slices through the cube, there's a black corner. If you slide all the sliders all the way over to the right, you'll see that there's a white point on the cube. And the cool thing about this is
see,
this had to I'm trying to attack a visualization problem of showing a material it's different on the inside than it is on the outside. So that's where the 3 slices came from.
nice. Yeah, this is super beautiful.
So if you can slide them all the way over to the right and get the yellow or
Right.
get the white point,
Yeah,
and we'll wrap this up pretty
yeah.
quickly.
You see the white
And
point there. Yeah.
yeah, and then try to get the white point kind of right there in the center of the screen,
Hmm.
center of the canvas, I mean. There's a little thing in the bottom called circle. Click the circle button. It's right below the sliders. And you can't really, so what the idea of that was, the circle is basically showing you how a different color space is translated from the color cube, and that would be the hue, saturation, and brightness color space. A lot of artists prefer that space. And the way you can visualize it, though, if you stand that cube up on a point and look straight down, you're looking. Yeah, there you go. Perfect. So what you're looking at is the hue is the angle from the center. That would be your hue. The saturation would be the distance from the center, and your brightness would be how high in the cube you are going straight back towards the black corner, which is on the other side of the cube. And it was just a way to visualize. Another thing that this shows is you have you have the cubic. The cube doesn't fit into a cylinder or the
Yeah.
round pegs don't fit into square holes problem. This really demonstrates why there's issues with translating between these two color spaces with a simple transform like they used to do in the old days for color television. These days they use a much more exotic transform that basically warps the cube around a little bit so they get better coverage of translation from one to the other. So, but that's basically it. I think if you look at the code there, it's a bunch of lines of code.
Yeah.
And the thing about this is I learned so much. It was a good place to play with JavaScript and get visual output instead of looking at text output. And again, my purpose for the color cube axis class was I needed a way to custom build a two-dimensional gradient, and that gradient changes as you slide those slices through the cube. It has to recompute each one of those gradients. So that was another issue. So that's basically it. I don't know what else I could say about it. It was a fun place to play. It's a fun place to actually learn some JavaScript,
Yeah.
and and I'm just so happy that that this actually dovetails pretty well with what you were doing, because it's about color and you were
Yeah.
mixing colors. So
Yeah.
awesome, huh?
That's really great. I love that. Yeah, I mean, I forgot to mention, but right, like in the computer space, we typically deal with additive colors, and in the painting space, we deal with um,
Subtractive.
subtractive colors.
Yep.
So the more colors you add, the darker it gets, and that's something to sort of like note and
Yeah.
pay attention to. And maybe there's a way that a fun way to be able to do the sort of painting mixture calculations and processing
Yeah,
as well.
and you can actually see the printing space. You can see the printing colors there on the corners on
Hmm.
the image we have right now. You see the corners that reach the outside circle?
Yeah.
That's where your yellow, your cyan, and your magenta. Those are the paints you put in your color printer.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cool. This is awesome. Um,
It was a lot of fun.
does
And
anyone have questions for Ron? Maybe even. Sorry to interrupt. Did you have something else you wanted to say?
no, that's it. I didn't want to get too deep into it. I mean, you posted the code, so people can go look at that on their own and study the code, and you can actually take. I do recommend, if you're going to do something this complicated, that you get an account on
Hmm.
on the
Hmm.
P5JS and
Yeah.
save your work, because it'll drive you nuts if
You
you
should be
don't
able to
do that.
duplicate, yeah, and add
Yeah,
it to your own library here and
yeah,
fork it off there. Yeah.
yep,
Yeah.
yep. You can absolutely do that. So, anybody does that, have fun and enjoy.
Great.
That's it.
Thanks so much. I actually have just a few slides that I could show you. In addition to that, where people have taken machine learning and applied that to Bob Ross paintings and generated Bob Ross paintings based on these little blobs, which they are fondly calling Blob Ross. Love that.
Another one of my passions, machine learning. you're you're right
Blob
there.
Ross to Bob Ross to Bot Ross.
Yeah.
Other ways to think about it is to create 3D objects using code and generating. This is done. This is Jessica Rosencrantz's work, and she makes these crazy 3D printed dresses based off of code. course, you could become a professional artist and sell your work for a lot of money. Generative works are becoming more and more of a thing now. Along with Casey Reas. Casey Reas is one of the co-founders of the processing language. And this is Lauren Mccarthy. So Lauren Mccarthy is also an artist, but she is actually the one responsible for creating the P5JS branched off of processing and is one of the major maintainers of that. I believe the torch has been passed on to someone else at this point, but um, she was pivotal for that, for the generation of this entire community that is P5JS. And in New York, where they are kind of a lot of the people involved with processing are, they have a variety of opportunities for people to get involved through the processing organization, or they have these processing day community meetups, and they also have the school there called School for Poetic Computation, which is sort of a wonderful name for a way of thinking about, for sort of a coursework that gets people thinking about artistic uses and critical uses of coding as a practice for making artwork. All right, that is actually the end. Thank you all for coming, and I hope you guys enjoyed this. Any feedback is wonderful, and I appreciate you all being here.